Hey everyone, welcome to the solar eclipse new moon, April 8th. I'm excited to do this transmission and I'm excited for the potential of what humanity gets to step into. So let's unpack this a little bit and remember what it means for you. So we have a stellium in Aries. That's more than 3 celestial bodies. We, in fact, have 6 celestial bodies. We have the sun and we have the moon because it's a new moon, and both of them are in Aries. 19 degrees 24. That is the exact degree point of the eclipse. And we have Chiron in Aries joining at that exact same degree point. That's unprecedented. We don't even have to extrapolate. It's right on top of each other. And then we have the North Node in Aries. We have Venus in Aries, and we have Mercury retrograde in Aries. And we have Mars sitting in Pisces, kind of like holding space for all of this to happen. Mars will be conjunct Saturn, and that is the opposite of what happened in the full moon lunar eclipse when Venus was conjunct Saturn. So we have some reboots for the masculine and feminine. This one is the masculine reboot as it's Mars conjunct Saturn. And that promises to be a time of spiritual growth. The whole thing is a time of spiritual growth and awakening in consciousness, if you are willing, if you are alongside of it. So let's presence what we're talking about in this timeline. So this Chiron, 19 degrees 24, Chiron being the wounded healer. I love Chiron. I started studying Chiron when I turned 50 because I learned about Chiron return. And I wrote this book called The Art of Turning 50. And in fact, when I rewrote it the year later and published it on Amazon, I added a chapter about Chiron because it was so huge. I was just awakening at that time to the divine feminine archetypes, to the archetype of the midlife woman as a queen. So instead of going from maiden, mother to crone, there's a queen in there. I was awakening to my queen, and I was awakening to Chiron, the wounded healer. Now, not everyone has an auspicious placement, but Chiron visits Chiron. So it's your return around the age of 49, 50, 51. It lasted for me a year and a half. It retrograded right over my exact degree point. And it's an auspicious placement. And that is the placement of healers, teachers, because we have felt wounded in some way. And that wounding is the sacred wound that drives our life work forward. And that indeed was exactly my story. I'm here, and my 11th house in service to the collective, because that's where I was wounded in this feeling that I don't have a right to be here. And I talk about that in another video because that is the Aries mansion. That's what's one of the things that's being healed, because Aries is I am here. I am on the world scene. I have come through the birth canal and I am here. But the wounding is, where have we been wounded in our right to be here? And I love that that is something I get to address from a place of not feeling that wounding anymore. So I'm here to support you in whatever way you feel that and have compensated, Libra South Node, the way you've compensated for that wounding by trying to prove yourself or make nice or legitimize your role here. So that's one of the questions of this solar eclipse and the reboot and the healing that's happening. So Chiron, the story of Chiron is that Chiron was one of the centaurs who was most intelligent and knew of healing modalities, and people came to him to heal. and he was not able to heal himself. He was able to heal others, but not able to heal himself. And some say that Chariklo, his wife, the divine feminine, was the one who healed him. And I love that story because Chariklo has been in the mix since the Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus conjunctions of 2020 that really initiated this entire cycle. Chariklo was right there. So the divine feminine has just been holding us in this entire process. And I can feel her now holding us as we're poised for Chiron to do his work in supporting us to heal ourselves. So are you open and willing to receive a healing? That's the question you get to answer for yourself. And to what extent? You know, there's a story of the three, I think it was three rabbis. I'm not sure, but I read it in one of the Alana Fairchild decks. And she said there's a story of three rabbis, I think it is, and each of them met God. They literally met the light. They met God. And one of them like died, one of them went crazy, and one of them got enlightened. And the moral of the story is that when you go too fast, you may not be prepared for that level of light. There's a lot of healing. Like we want to be enlightened. We want to know ultimate truth. And if we really did, we would disintegrate. It's nuclear. It's a nuclear explosion to our identity. And Aries is the identity. It is the I am. It is the consciousness in form. So we get to do the healing work that's at the level of what we can receive. And so I love the grace of not having more to annihilate me, just receiving as much as I can receive and that I'm able to receive. And then it's up to me to use my will to get alongside of my healing and to expand my capacities for healing. So this conjunction of Sun, Moon, Chiron, North Node, and then Mercury is going to visit it and carry messages. So imagine all this stellium of Aries, Mercury comes in and out, taking messages with it to your conscious mind, because Mercury represents the mind messages. Mercury, Chiron was at 19 degrees, 24 seconds in July of 2023. When I found that out through Molly McCord, astrologer, I was really psyched. So go back to July of 2023. Someone was sharing today in the Sisterhood activation this process that got culminated today that actually started in July of 2023 that represented a huge healing for her. Can't make that up. This is the timeline. So July of 2023, what is actually culminating? And I'm just thinking right now, oh my God, there's something that I did not realize. Sometimes, we got to go back and look at our calendars to find out what that thing was. But Chiron was there. And what was the lesson? And for me, it was giving away my power, just in very insidious, subtle ways that I give away my power because I don't feel like I know the answer. So I was giving my power away to those who I put on a pedestal of knowing the answer. And they don't know the answer. Most people don't know the answer, especially about you. They don't know the answer. People have perspectives, and it's great to sift and sort and discern through perspectives. And then at some point, you have to take all the perspectives off the table and choose. And that was my crucible of 2023 and early 2024. So Chiron was there at that degree point because Chiron likes to retrograde and move forward. So it spends a lot of time. And so if you have an auspicious placement, you're going to, Chiron is going to go on your Chiron like multiple times. And I got hit multiple times in my Chiron return. And it's such a deep, deep healing. And for me, the healing was the mother wound, 100%. And today on our Sisterhood activation, we were talking about the mother wound. So that could be where that's what's unearthing, because it can show up in other areas of your life, but underneath it, you know, it was a wound that you carried from the feminine line. And I'm talking to divine feminine women. So we are carrying a lot of feminine wounding. Today, I'm filming this on Easter for the new moon on April 8th. And there is a lot of feminine wounding around the narrative in religion on the role of the women. She's been maligned, cut out, murdered, and suppressed, and just gaslit. And so we are waking up from that fog. Now, that Chiron, this is what's cool. I took notes when I was listening to Molly, and I'm extending this to you, is that then Chiron comes into the picture on the solar eclipse new moon. And then Chiron comes back to that same degree in December, end of December. How sweet is that? Like, again, you know, we have these, healing is in layers. If you haven't noticed, it's in layers. So we get another pass at the healing that we've already initiated, and that this solar eclipse new moon is going to, bam, solidify. And it's for the collective. Then we don't have another eclipse in Aries the rest of this year. The next one is in Libra. Then next year, February, March, we have another eclipse in Aries. And that is where Chiron, also same degree as this Chiron meeting the eclipse, 19 degrees, 24 seconds, is going to hit that again. So this eclipse energy was initiated in July. We're going to feel the apex of it, and then we're going to have vestiges of it later this year and next year. I just love geometry like that. I love numbers like that. The math of it is pretty cool. And what it means for you and me is what we get to contemplate. And what does it mean for the collective? And so where is our intention? What are we holding for the collective? That's going to be an important question to contemplate through this transmission, because it's not just about us personally. And it's never about us personally, but personally, all of us together make up the collective. So we're experiencing a new consciousness coming on the scene. I think we know that. I think we've been prepared for that. I think that's what's happened since 2020. And it's emerging through this solar eclipse. It's going to take its time. It's going to also be Uranian. It's going to be like that. And it's going to take its time, because there's a lot of healing energy and things that we need to clean up in our collective past. So we're seeing stories come to light about the feminine, about lies, and the truth coming forward. It's a new chapter. It's a new beginning. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So there's a cycle change, and we can feel that cycle change. So what new footing are we collectively on? I'm really holding the space in this. When I go back to intention, I'm really, really holding the space of collective healing. We've been doing a lot of trauma work, nervous system regulation work. That's all in the zeitgeist. You know, like Gabor Mate, like, he's blown up. Why is he blown up? Because people can relate to what he's saying as, holy shit, these behaviors I'm doing are actually trauma. And in my transition of Gene Key 21, I talk about control actually being a symptom of trauma, how we manage trauma. So now we know that to step into a new world, a new frequency, we must let go of the trauma. We must heal. We must not block the healing anymore. What if you were to receive a complete healing? Now, that doesn't mean that it erases your memory, or that you may not have to ever deal with it. You might have to confirm the deletions. I love that term. But just like my core wound was about not feeling like I had a right to exist and all the compensatory behavior that came along with it, I don't live in that frequency anymore. I can't even hardly imagine that I had that. So imagine for yourself that you're going to be sitting in a new normal going, I can't even imagine that I used to be this way. This is the portal that we're walking through. So, what are you ready to see in yourself? Maybe that you've been holding on to a story and that you know it's time. Maybe you know it's time to forgive yourself. Maybe you know it's time to forgive someone else. And forgiving someone else does not mean that you have to excuse in any way their behavior. It means that you complete with them so that they no longer control you, that that event is not happening in your mind even right now. That's where we get to be free. That's where we get to plug our agency into this. So the other part of it is that I'm seeing is this fractured sense of self. That's also part of the Aries I am, stepping into your right to be here, your right to exist, and the fullness of your right to exist. You know, my brain guy used to do this thing on him. He had this incredible machine, and it was kind of bioenergetic. And he would measure how much distance there was between your farthest parts. So imagine that we're made up of many parts, which we are. And you remember from our transforming trauma class and course that we have for sale that it's all parts work. So we're in conversation with our parts. So imagine that this part over here and this part over here are so far apart that it equals on this machine like 100. That's like a vast chasm where we can experience in real life, we experience a fragmentation. And in that way, it might feel like we experienced a lot of success, but we can't really enjoy it. Or in relationship, but we can't really sink in to the relationship. We can't really receive. Or we feel like an imposter. Part of us is lying. And that's because we're not congruent and we're not in integrity. So in integrity is about, like, you think of an integer, it's a whole number. It means wholeness, that your parts are aligned and together. And when we're fragmented, like especially at 100 on that machine, like let's say 0 to 100, that reflects a very fragmented person. And that's how people lie, because their fragmentation, the part of them thinks they're not really doing it. It's another part of them that's actually doing the lying, the cheating. There are people who have had dual lives, for example, like they have a family and their family thinks that that person goes away for business. But what that person does is they go to their other family, and those two families don't know that each other exists. And each family thinks that the guy's going to work, but actually he's going to the other family. How does that happen? It's called a fragmented self. The selves are not together. So there's a cost that the soul pays for that. The body pays for that. The psyche pays for that, let alone all the other people in your world. So chances are those kinds of things are coming to light. And usually people self-sabotage in that situation because a part of them just cannot handle that fragmentation. So they self-sabotage it, they get caught. And it's really a shame because it's so unconscious that they really don't have the open throat to have the conversation of what's really true for them and how much they love other people, and whatever situation they want to create for themselves. They don't have the consciousness to do it with integrity. So they lie. And that lying is part of what is coming to light, especially during an eclipse. All right, so let's see if there's anything else. There's also Aries represents survival, and it's a very primal energy. So we also get to have some healing around what are we in survival about? And maybe it's money. And what does money represent? Maybe again, there's some deeper belief that has caused you to feel disempowered in making your own money, in making things happen. Maybe there's a sense of competition, and that's one of the masculine paradigms that I believe is coming up for reprogramming among the feminine. We are rejecting the notion of competition as a way that we want to do business. It's patriarchal programming. You think about, I just did the transmission on Gene Key 21, and Gene Key 21 is patriarchal programming around control. So there's so much here on many levels, and you really get to just look at your life and just make some notes as to what it is that's coming up for you. And one of the things that Molly McCord mentioned, and I think this is really, really important, is how much of that control, Gene Key 21, how much of that patriarchal programming is driving your sense of self, Aries. So when we're in this feminine reclamation, we're in this time of reclaiming who we really are and the intrinsic value of who we really are, and leaving behind patterns like competition that had us prove that we have a right to exist. That's all patriarchal programming. So how much of your sense of self or the way you do business has been built on that? And underneath that is this feeling of not being loved, not being worthy, not being valued just for who you are. I remember one of my coaches said to me, can you imagine that you will be in a situation where you're acknowledged just for being who you are and not what you do? And at that time, I couldn't imagine it. I just couldn't. I really felt like my value was connected to what I did. And that was part of the patriarchal programming. It was part of this deeper wound of not feeling like I had a right to exist, so I must prove myself. Now, again, that slate has been wiped clean, and I went through my Chiron return, and it has a way of doing that. Not like bam, but over time, if you stick with the work and you keep deconditioning, the work works. So this is really the deepest journey of the self, and that's what Aries represents. And so it's juxtaposed with Libra. Libra is pulling us out, saying, yeah, but what about me over here? Others, what's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my coworkers? What's going to happen to my community if I do this? Right? We all have that. But Aries is like, wait a second, it's first principles. You got to come back to the self. It's the journey of the self, because when you're not in right relationship, when you're not in integrity with the self, then you're not in integrity in your relationship. So you can't really save yourself through saving other people. You must come and save yourself. You must go on your own journey of the self, and then form alliances with others in a way that brings your true self forward. And that's always a yoga. We forget, and then we remember, and we forget and remember. And that's going to take practice of us putting voice to it, speaking, and shape shifting and correcting as needed. But we're getting good at that as the feminine. It's coming on, and that's part of the healing that's happening. So that's really when we think about reprogramming the masculine, as Mars in Pisces meets up with Saturn during this whole eclipse, new moon, we're also considering what masculine part of us are we reprogramming, like that part of competition, like that part of forming my identity in a masculine way from the patriarchal programming of 6,000 years, and really saying, you know what, I want to march to the beat of a totally different drum because I said so. And what Molly McCord said, and I really just digested a lot of her material for this new moon. So just homage to her and all the beautiful astrologers like Pam Gregory and Michael Lennox, who I love so much, Chani Nicholas. That this is really this 30-year cycle, karmic cycle. And so we can keep popping out by seeing cycles in cycles in cycles. It's like wormholes within wormholes within wormholes. And we're always operating within a cycle. And we don't even have to track it or know, because our bodies know it. And not every cycle is relevant to your natal blueprint. But when it's relevant, you're on track, something happens. And these eclipses are very like fated, like it was meant to be. It was meant to happen. There was an interruption that is meant to happen. So all I can say is go alongside of it, all your big realizations, get alongside of it. I presence this in one of my videos, and I'll say it again. And someone brought this through in an email where she said, she was quoting an author who said, if you're in doubt and it's something you haven't done, try it, because thinking about it is nothing like the experience of it. But if you're in doubt and it's something that's in your reality that you have now, get rid of it and just see what it's like. Because the letting go of it will help you determine whether it was really for you. And so what you've been motivated by in the past, you're changing, you're growing, you're totally different. You're not going to be motivated by the same things anymore. And this is what this time period is going to bring to you. So it is time to let go. It's time to try on new things. And if you have doubt, try it on. If you have doubt and it's in your field, let it go. And it's a focus really of releasing. That 30-year karmic cycle I mentioned is, we've been in a big release cycle and we're not complete. So we're having layers. We're living our lives, and then we're constantly in this purification of letting go to keep track and keep pace with the fullness of self-expression of who you are. Who are you here to be? The self-actualization of you, your blueprint. And ultimately what happens, and I'm going to get a little gene key on you right here, is what happens is you become the fullness of who you are. And then you completely dissolve that identity. That's the beauty of it. I'll end with a quote from my brain guy, who I always reference because he was such a big teacher of mine. He was an Aries as well. In fact, his birthday was April 4th. And he's passed now. And he used to tell me, because I was on the spiritual path and so deeply wanting to be out of suffering, that I studied non-dualism and non-duality. And I just wanted to be no thing. And he was like, Kenlyn, you need to be someone before you can be no one. And this is Aries for us. We get to step into the fullness of our blueprint. And I have done that, and I am doing that. And when we get to that point, the universe will then, in co-conspiracy with our higher selves, say, and now you get to see yourself as no one. I think it's so beautiful. And perhaps that's the awakening that's coming for this new moon solar eclipse. I'll tune in with you closer to the time, because Gene Key 51 will be our Gene Key, and the city is awakening. You can't make this up. So here we are on the ride. Happy new moon. Happy solar eclipse. May all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste.